Not sure how much of the plans Elon Musk has about long-term implantation. We have seen some signs from his experiments with them reporting electrodes failing deep in the brain, and these are common reports that we had before in the academic literature. What happens next? So after failures, you can replace the implant or you can leave it there. Neither options are optimal. When we are building LLMs, we have something called reasoning. Its ability for the LLMs to basically preempt and recursively in some sort of closed loop where it's evaluating how to get an answer to the user. And this reasoning approach seems kind of like sort of the reasoning we have when we're thinking of a task. But we must be careful with crossing the line of what is an algorithmic reasoning and an awareness. Because with awareness, it tackles all our senses, right? So we have spatial awareness, we have audio awareness, and not only that, we are embodied machines, right? So our brain is let's say, is in touch with our movement. So spatial awareness then becomes like a really maybe precursor or vice versa. So maybe because we have our abilities to move, and so nicely, that's when we develop our spatial awareness. And I saw the very first keynote was by a professor from Berkeley called Michel Mahabis. And that was 2009. And he showed his work on the Cyber Beetle. They developed a computer chip which were implanted through the eyes of the beetle and reaching the brain of the beetle, a live beetle. They were able to control the fly of this beetle using the Wi-Fi port.
Baseline.
The baseline is designed to create an emotional response.
I've seen things you won't believe.
More human than human.
Make you question everything.
Today we're joined by Dr. Michael Barros. Barros.
Perfect.
Brazilian.
Portuguese-Brazilian.
Portuguese-Brazilian. He's a researcher at the University of Essex and at the Alan Turing Institute. Michael leads the UC2 lab here at Essex, where he's studying how living systems communicate and cognitively process things, all the way down to molecules and cells in living organisms, all the way up to full brain circuits and the way our very cognition works within our own brains. His work is spanning biology, neuroengineering, and even biological computing, which all areas converge into this progressive technology area that does indeed include synthetic intelligence and artificial intelligence. Michael has spent years at the forefront of discussing and researching how the brain really connects. In this conversation, we're going to explore more of what Michael is doing, but also focusing on brain maps and how unconventional signals like astrocytes and exosomes matter. But most importantly, what Michael's work and this community's work means for humanity itself. You know, the idea of invasive technology within the brain itself is actually quite frightening. You know, yes. It was frightening. But then when you start to find common ground with the people working on these very complex subjects, you realize that they're just humans too.
That's right.
And they have their own personal traumas and motivations which drive purpose and meaning in the work they do. And actually coming to Essex University a couple of months ago, and then coming again, it gives me huge hope with the type of people that I meet and the students and yourself, what you're doing in terms of your new modules. It gives me hope that some of the big problems are really going to be fixed here in these rooms, in these corridors.
I'm glad to hear. No, that's what we really want to do. We are people that are very interested in how to do things, right? It's not about like adding an implant in the brain. It's how to do it safely and how to do it so that our body is basically satisfied with the implantation, so there is not any adversity to the brain implant itself. It's functioning, but the primary reason we want to do this is to help society, help humanity fix or treat the diseases that are maybe incurable, or currently there are not any effective treatment to that. We do it in a way that in a community that also with a lot of like-minded people. I have never come across any individual that are doing this for the wrong reasons. We're all focused in these very scary brain diseases or other types of diseases in our body that we believe if we can interface with them in the right way and in the long term, people can have better lives.
In many ways, we are in a, I find that our solution to many issues is pharmaceutical. The pharmaceutical industry is a, probably multi-trillion dollar global industry, and does amazing things for pain relief. And, we know there's huge strides forward that, have extended longevity, improved quality of life. It's a fantastic business. It's a fantastic service to humanity. But when I was speaking to Renia last time, and some of the work that I've been looking at around, brain mapping and understanding more about where cognition occurs and how the brain reacts to tumours, and I have this feeling that BCI, brain-computer interface, or the ability to work with the brain and augment it, could be as large an industry in terms of proactively avoiding diseases or cognitive issues, which brings a huge amount of moral questions about what humanity is, and should we allow diversity of neurodiversity? Do we all want to, there's so many questions that occur. But do you feel BCI is going to, do you feel it's going to become a industry like the pharmaceutical industry?
I think we have good signs that it's going that direction. So we have actually a variety of great companies on this space already. For example, GTech is a huge one. And GTech focuses on brain-machine interfaces like EEG types and has been leading the development of this technology in the industry space for a bit of time now. And we have really new, exciting types of industries like IOTA Bioscience, which focus on the wireless brain interfaces, which allows to do deep implantation and control these implants with wireless signals. Moving forward, there will be a new term that might emerge called Electroceuticals. So Electroceuticals is basically this merge of what we know as pharmaceuticals and what we know as implants. Now, Electroceuticals.
Electroceuticals.
Yes.
Not pharmaceuticals, okay.
Electroceuticals, but electroceuticals will emerge within the pharmaceuticals, but instead of taking a chemical approach to pain or diseases, might take the electrical stimulation approach. So there is a body of work done with incredible researchers in the world, including Michael Levin, that they discuss the role of bioelectricity. Bioelectricity not necessarily belongs to our brain. Actually, bioelectricity can be found all throughout our body. There is very tiny currents that can be passed through different types of cells, including epithelial cells. So in terms of what we define as communication within the body, it can be through molecules, which touches the chemical aspects of our bodies, but it also can be purely on the electrical let's say, electrical signals that we have, on the currents that our body propagates. So if we know how to interface those circuits in the right way by first mapping them, and then we have the whole closed loop cycle. So we map them, we understand what they are, then we can predict them. And if we predict them in a way that we predict our safe interventions, we'll be able to interface with our bodies electrically, and then we can have a new ally to fight the diseases that is only starting now to be explored.
Why is it only now? Like, it seems this whole analysis of oneself, both physically and psychologically, seems as though it should be as ancient as, planetary physics. But it feels like a very...
Yes.
Is it a recent thing?
It is a recent thing because it's huge correlated with silicon technology, right? So implants have been dependent on power, right? So the whole technology about batteries, about sourcing these devices with the right amount of power for them to actually survive for long term. And the second one, which also has a significant impact, is miniaturization. So obviously you have been around for a while, so you remember like our PCs in 10 years time were completely
phones
different.
that were in a rucksack, like in the early days, I say, yeah. So nobody wants to be walking around with a rucksack brain kind of thing. Exactly.
So we need very tiny devices, and how small they need to be depends on the location of the place they want to be implanted, right? So in our brains, what we're looking at is 10 micromillimeters in cubic size, which are very tiny. To build a device like this costs millions. But we need also a lot of devices so that they be effective. So that's the scenario we're looking at, right? So we have this miniaturization efforts needs to be so incredibly tight and cost effective that we can only see the trends of this being implemented now, not any time before. And the third thing is safety. What are the right biomaterials, or even like metamaterials, or this is hugely dependent on our bodies adapting this technology in a way that it understands it's safe. And how sensitive our bodies is, I think you spoke with Rainy a little bit about this. Our bodies are so reactive to any kind of foreign material that is not biological that I'm not sure even newest metamaterials will be enough. Maybe only biomaterials will be enough. But how do we build implants only using biomaterials is, to me, one of the key questions. Because when we depart from silicon-based, from the predictable and reliable technology that we know is now, to biological materials where it's unpredictable, time evolving, we need to find a solution that they kind of are equivalent in a way. It will never be equivalent, but they are enough to do a job that we intended to do with the implants. I think there is a way. We just need to explore and make sure we deliver such solution.
So the perception of an iPad or something bolted to the side of your head is actually quite a dated view, because what we're saying is the materials themselves that's built of, the immune system will react and resist.
That's right.
Whereas we're talking about building computers out of biological material.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
It is.
And then implanting them in our own biology. I mean, that's a new... The idea that somehow we're walking around with our biological body that we were born with and we've grown, and additional biomaterial that's somehow integrated seamlessly with our immune system resisting, but that's augmenting us mentally or physically. It sounds crazy.
Sounds really crazy. But I think it's to deal with the part that we say it sounds crazy is to deal with the perception
Yes.
of what a computer is and what our cells are. So, as you know, computing started with Turing trying to crack German code in the war. That was symbolic information, right? But computing at that time, the term extended from numbers to symbols being encoded into numbers. Our cells, they process information, right? So they take chemical inputs, electrical inputs, even lights, as some sort of information, and they react to it. And they produce an output too. But then here's the question. So if they have an ability to deal with an input and correlate it with an output, it's just maybe another way of computing. It's not numbers in the end of the day, but they are processing information. So maybe it's because we use computers that maybe sounds a little bit, distant, but in reality, the machines we have, they're processing information in silicon-based device computers, and our bodies are processing information too. But how now can we encode information that we know comes from, let's say, electrical sources into the sources that are basically biosafe, that are basically understood by our cells, and let's see what they can produce as output. Cells start to communicate and organize. That's where complexity starts to come into play. And it seems that the level of complexity of organisms is correlated with the amount of functioning they have, right? So even if you look at prokaryotic cells like bacteria, they seem quite powerful as a single entity. But then when they communicate and become like biofilms and colonies, they become stronger, right? As this sort of distributed system that is basically communicating to the point that allows more computing to happen. So at one point we become not computers, but we become organisms, is correlated with obviously evolution, and how much of what I'm claiming biocomputing can do is purely distant from a whole organism level, because that's where intelligence starts emerging. And intelligence is a really interesting term because we loosely define what intelligence is. We don't have a clear grasp of intelligence. People, for example, artificial intelligence, we have training of, let's say, algorithms, right? The statistic algorithms that calculates output and input relationships. But are they truly intelligent? I mean, if I just put a new set of data, they don't work anymore as intended. So my point is, no, I'm not claiming we're just machines, processing information machines, because the complexity of organisms leads to a much bigger scale or dimension of what they are doing that I don't think anybody understands yet of what
This
truly is.
I mean, this is fascinating because coming from a technology background and watching the evolution of modern artificial intelligence and researching it back to the 60s and 50s, because artificial intelligence was coined at the time we were building the first computers, right? So the recent surge in perception and awareness because of the general, pre-trained transformer technology and the application of that through conversational AI like ChatGPT and others. Everybody has an opinion on AI. They're either an expert, they're an expert on AI, or they've dismissed it completely by saying, it's just, and they dismiss it. People dismiss it out of hand. And others believe, it's going to take all the jobs and it's going to ruin humanity. So AI is the first technology that has given me a pathway to speak to people like you, who is understanding this on a much deeper level. One thing that I got into a debate on LinkedIn, which I never used to do, but now I just think, I'll stick a stick in this idiot.
Why not?
And what they were trying to say is AI is not intelligence because it doesn't have awareness. So my sticking was, what is awareness? Because if awareness is our processing of a limited number of sensory data inputs, visual, sound, combined with a residual short-term and long-term memory set of last time I smelt that I felt hungry, or last time I saw that it was time to do X, then well awareness isn't that just us plugging into the world in which we live around us to process that information through a set of rules and memories to affect an outcome? I mean, because if you bake it down, like in technology language, all of a sudden you can dehumanize human behavior.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people, that frightens people.
Does.
It frightens people a lot.
It does.
Because what it makes them do is question subconsciously what they actually are.
That's true. Awareness is a very good way to frame this, especially with the difference, I think, in designed intelligence versus natural intelligence, right? Because when we are building LLMs, we have something called reasoning. Its ability for the LLMs to basically preempt and recursively in some sort of closed loop where it's evaluating how to get an answer to the user. And this reasoning approach seems kind of like sort of the reasoning we have when we're thinking of a task. But we must be careful with crossing the line of what is an algorithmic reasoning and an awareness. Because with awareness, it tackles all our senses, right? So we have spatial awareness, we have audio awareness, and not only that, we are embodied machines, right? So our brain is let's say, is in touch with our movement. So spatial awareness then becomes like a really maybe precursor or vice versa. So maybe because we have our abilities to move, and so nicely, that's when we develop our spatial awareness. So those that I'm speaking is directly to your example, because LLMs, even though we can upload a video, upload an audio, or they're trained on a body of knowledge on audio and videos, they're not actively having that awareness. So then you may think that, okay, so what's the difference now, right? So they are incredibly intelligent machines, but in terms of active censoring the environment, they are not. So how can I make sure that they are aware with very limited view of the world? And I have not seen, maybe you have seen, but I have not seen like a good measure of awareness that encapsulates all these other dimensions that we are exposed to, but LLMs are not. And until we have like an objective measure of either cognition awareness or whatever direction it goes, I think this answer will be very hard for us to actually give a satisfiable, answer to this question.
This idea that humanity is embodied intelligence versus large language models, which they aren't embodied, they're unembodied, they're unrestricted by, you could be asking ChatGPT for advice on something, but it doesn't know that there's traffic moving, there's weather conditions, there's physical effect. I mean, this idea of embodied intelligence, I start to think that can our intelligence be extracted from our body and implanted in something else? And what does that mean when our body starts to degrade? Does our intelligence degrade with it, or can it transcend our physical embodiment of that intelligence?
It has. You have to allow this transfer of consciousness to have similar effects to our environment. So you have to have a simulated world like the Matrix, where our brains are tricked that this environment is basically allows the embodied intelligence to be.
I mean, the what I would say is the embedding of large language model and machine learning and other types of things that sit within the AI body, within robotics, within machines, then they do start to have a sense of physical limitation that can move between certain. I mean, the next level of embedding of conversational AI and functional AI and machine learning, etc., within robotics, like Optimus from Tesla, and
Yes.
many others, which we're starting to see in factories, etc. You are starting to create embodied intelligence, and if they're able to incrementally evolve through an increased set of data that's being processed and stored based on its reality, a little bit like a Roomba robot.
Yes.
You stick it down, it doesn't know where it is until it starts banging against the walls, and very soon it starts to have a picture of the room, and then it doesn't need to bang against the walls because it's known its limitations. So it's enhanced its own physical awareness
Yes.
by starting to record parameters of its ability. Do you see? So
Yes.
like that's a very simple example, but when you think about a humanoid robot, it's going to learn over time. Now, but that's what humans do themselves.
That is like what is also interesting when that happens is we will start to have a better understanding of the role of other types of intelligence within our body that we haven't paid attention to, including what is really interesting to me is the gut-brain axis, which means that the bacteria in our guts, they influence our thoughts by sending chemicals all the way up. That has to do with what you eat, what types of food you take in. It has to deal with like toxicity and has to deal with all types of usage of chemicals, like including alcohol. So when you think about embodied intelligence, it goes all the way to it's mood scale. So I'm a person that's very much interested academically in mood scale biology.
What's that, sorry?
So it's our ability to understand how the low spatial temporal scales in the biochemistry can lead to a whole organism functioning. So we look all the way from genetics and signaling pathways to whole cell functioning. That's another scale. Then moving up the scale ladder, we have networks of cells. Then we have organs. And then we have a whole organism. With the robotics and the LLMs, we don't fully understand how far we are from a pure biological organism in terms not only on its functioning but the intelligence, because every cell in our body plays a role in our organism. I think we can all agree to that. But with robotics, we have an abstraction of that. Even if it's our fingers, we have an abstraction of our fingers. To embed all the functionality of our finger into a robotic finger is very demanding. Because not only in terms of the ability for our cells to regenerate from cuts, our ability for our cells to also reorganize and evolve and grow in size and in shape, has also to do with the capacity of it processing the environment. That we need a lot of more technological advancement to make that comparison. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to see a full embodied intelligence. Very excited.
A synthetic embodied intelligence.
because then we will know how big of a leap is a natural biological intelligence to a robotic, even with LLMs integrated into it, type of intelligence, fully designed. I started academia early. I was 17 years old, and my first year I started engaging with research. But I wanted first just to get to know it and experience it. And turns out we developed what we call radio frequency identification system. So this is now obviously established technology where we have tags.
RFID, yeah.
Exactly, RFID. So we did a coding mechanism to allow us to improve the capacity of what the IDs tags were identifying. And then we published a poster in an international conference in Brazil. So I went to present that. And I saw the very first keynote was by a professor from Berkeley called Michel Mahabis. And that was 2009. And he showed his work on the Cyber Beetle. Have you heard?
No, tell me about it.
They developed a computer chip which were implanted through the eyes of the beetle and reaching the brain of the beetle, a live beetle. They were able to control the fly of this beetle using the Wi-Fi port.
No. Is this real?
You can.
So they were
everybody can
remote
Google it.
controlling a live beetle
Yes,
through an embedded chip.
2009, Ian. I was exactly how you were. This is better than any science fiction movie I've ever seen. And after that, I went to my professor and I was like, we need to do research on this. This is absolutely fascinating. I'm sold. And it became an obsession. We do have the capabilities of engaging with biohybrids already. Now the question is why, what for, and in what way can we embed this into our society? Because it's very powerful if you think about it. When you think about mirroring what we are, I absolutely agree with you. We've been very great engineers, haven't we, humanity-wise, building all these amazing tools that we have now. Maybe that's what we were trying to do. All we're trying to do is unconsciously maybe replicating ourselves to a way that's much more powerful. I don't know, but it seems like it. But why we're building this?
How do we not know we've already done that many times over?
Over and over, and then that's...
Like, I'm trying to work out whether conspiracy theories are becoming more accepted, but, you start looking into, the pyramids, how long they've been around and the technology that was involved and how the stories that we told were, about carving blocks and putting them on logs and then pulling them don't make sense or can't be replicated.
Yes.
And it starts to look, and I think that as a child, I always certainly felt that we were peak humanity. Whereas as you get older and start to look back at more ancient civilizations, you realize they were achieving fascinating socioeconomic, complex,
impressive, yeah.
and very sophisticated socioeconomic structures, very different to the way we do now. But I start to think, are we just this? Are we this linear, progressive, evolved species, or are we something that's actually rebuilt and remodeled through different phases?
No, I agree with you. It's probably bumpy road, isn't it, to progressing. There might have been cycles, and if it is cycles, my thinking is how we break the cycle, right? How we make sure this never happens again, and then I'll continue on the steady progress. And I think that reflects to the value of information and truth, and how important places like this, universities, and how important are researchers to document technology like this, document in a way that even if a worldwide catastrophe happens, we can pass it on to the next phase.
Will AI solve for that?
Definitely is what I'm inclined to say.
Because there's a school of thought that would suggest, if an academic institution is made obsolete by the fact that anybody can use basic conversation to interact with an AI that can guide that person with knowledge and information, then why do you need a degree?
We still need new knowledge.
I agree.
We still need new knowledge.
So this perception that universities are done and everybody's got AI, and like the more I talk and the more I think, the more I realize that's nonsensical.
Very dangerous,
because
yes.
it's dangerous.
Yes.
Because the boundary of what we know and what we don't know, and what we know, what we don't know, and has moved forwards. And AI isn't gonna, from what I understand, is not gonna be able to synthetically generate information to move that boundary forward again.
That's right. You certainly need full grasp of the world that I think only now embodied intelligence can do it, natural embodied. I don't think LLMs might be able to have, even with the use of agents, even search through the whole body of academic literature, the level of what is proposing, it's always shallow. It never is completely satisfying to an academic eye. If they will be able to reach that level, I think it's only when some sort of synthetic embodied intelligence is able to do the work. Because even doing experiments in vitro for biotech, I mean, it only humans can do. So how come LLMs reading through academic papers will have that understanding is, to me, inviable, because there is a lot of untold technology and knowledge that only are in certain labs, only through those people, and only pass to the generations of a single lab. So you see, it's very complex to make that claim. There is a lot of knowledge still in the universe that hasn't been documented yet. And I think AI can play a big part on that by helping researchers to document it as much as they can, to make sure that we store this, even in unconventional ways, store all this information that what humanity has worked for. With all the data sheets of any equipment or any protocols, that all these in vitro tests that we run, we have to store this for a long, long time and protect it. And we talk about AI and all the computing infrastructure that we need for AI only takes like a solar storm to basically end it.
There's a worry that's come for me recently, is that, and it came up again in a couple of conversations I've had. One of them was around using AI-led robotics to do eye surgeries to cataract operations. And the theory is the best surgeon is the one that's doing 100 of these things a day.
Right.
That's in India doing 100 cataract operations, because when you go to them, their fingers, their neurons, that surgeon is doing that task all the time. So they're fully experienced. The neurons are fresh. They themselves, as an embodied intelligence, are going to do a great cataract operation. Now, if you move to AI, I know AI can do 80% of the cataract operations now. So that means the surgeon is sitting for 80% of the time doing nothing, right? So his neurons, his neuroplasticity, his dexterity in his fingers, whatever, he's only using it 20% of what he was when he was doing all the operations himself. So what you actually have is this driver who's allowing the car to drive itself, but will step in when the algorithm or there's a limited function. The problem is he's 80% less, or she's 80% less experienced because they're allowing the machine to do it.
Yeah.
So is there a point where we have to fully switch over? Is there this point of no return that we enable AI to do certain jobs and humans opt out? And if that happens, that's a big problem. That's a big problem.
I think you have come with a really good realization of some of the dangers of this technology. The surgeon is probably engaging in online learning, right? He's updating its abilities through every surgery. So every day is a massive learning, let's say, experience that these surgeons have in your example. And I think with any kind of skill, we do we do the same. Um, for example, here, teaching all these years, various modules, every year, it seems like I'm always improving, and I always get more satisfaction every year, even teaching the same module, because you are improving yourself, you're studying more, you're learning more, and that becomes really powerful. Does our synthetic intelligence have that capabilities of learning through skills? I don't think so, because they already, when we train them, we essentially are trying to safeguard that particularly technology to do that skill over and over again. And that's a big miss, isn't it? So I think we need always a balance, because ultimately we all agree that any piece of technology, we sell it as the ultimate thing, but it isn't. We need to recognize this, and we need to say, let's not stop learning. Let's continue learning, not only in research, but also in the clinics, and also in our skills or everything we do in our jobs, because there is always more to learn.
Do you? How long have you been teaching?
Right now, this is my 6th year,
Are students changing?
massively.
Really? I mean, obviously in 6 years you've seen the evolution of ChatGPT and others. Obviously, Google's been around, Google search. What do you see changing within the student population?
There is it's a bit worrying what I'm seeing. Is everything for the bad? I don't think so, but it's been polarizing. It's been separating, and it has to do with skills. Going through university, it's a great experience, as you know, and learning demands willpower. You need to be very motivated and willing to learn. With this technology, it empowers, but also it maybe tricks the students a little bit, because obviously they think, because they have so much access to knowledge, that to learn that skill is not as hard or time consuming as it used to be. But there are a few students that still have that. Okay? So what ends up happening is there are part of the students that are basically creating this dependency on this technology. And there are other students that are basically getting empowered by this technology. So then the separation between the top 10 and the remaining part of the class starts increasing. And that's what we have been observing here and throughout all levels and all modules. Of course, like in some courses that demands more of a hands-on skill, I think it automatically gets protected. For example, electronic engineering, when you have to go to design certain electronics, and you have to basically use the breadboard and other things to implement them, which requires a bit of a skill like soldering, that still gets them a little bit to the point where they might consult with AI, with LLMs, but they're not letting LLMs do the job. Now with software engineering is a completely different story, because from what the assignments we use to teach our students the practicals, they obviously are not so complex that demands a team of software engineers to work together. They're typically low level in terms of complexity, so this is basically nothing to an LLM. So then they are very much inclined in using it. So the way I've approached my assignments is to increase the level of, let's say, thinking. So you have different parts of the assignment. Each one has its different level of complexity, but they are all integrated. So what end up happening is, if you put that into an LLM, it has difficulty of processing everything. It will dump a lot of code, and that's what I see. I see a bunch of code, but in the end, it does nothing.
This ability to access knowledge in a very, the language in a human way. Do you think it affects the ability to retain knowledge for the individual? And I don't mean to lead you here, but like when you know answers, logic, knowledge is immediately available, the subconscious necessity to retain it, it's just not there.
Oh.
Do you know? Because I know that I can just press a button, look at a screen, speak to a conversational AI, and I worry that as memory itself and our ability to retain information changes, our very embodied intelligence must functionally change as well.
Yeah.
So humans will, they are going to, evolve. I'm using this word evolve and I don't really understand what it means, but we are going to change based on the fact that, and we already are changing and have been changing for 20 years, the fact that we have this. I'm sitting here with this like a dummy. You know what I mean? This is my comfort blanket. You're there completely relaxed. I've been thinking, like you're analysing, I've got folded legs, I've got this thing protecting me. All of the knowledge in the world. But did you see? But to an extent, I probably couldn't be doing this without that. So it's a great enabler for me. Because it's quite complicated.
No, and I absolutely agree with you, because like one of the best reactions I like to see in my students is when they synthesize information by themselves. So then I'm explaining something, they go like, like they reach that moment.
Mm. So students that are coming in this year, last year, are they over this mobile phone era, or are they still within it?
No, they're still. It's. I would say it's getting a bit more worrisome. It's getting a little bit more. We'll see more and more evening usage of phone in classes. Obviously, like it's a bit fuzzy for us because, for example, in my classes, when I teach computer programming, I ask the students to bring their laptops because when I teach code, I want them to test straight away on their computers and see for themselves. So, but I still see that can be a bit dangerous in terms of, being that enabler for them to do other things, including not look at the content of the class, right? They seem to be very hooked into powerful, fast interacting, fast-paced technology. I just think that pushes us away from thinking, critical thinking, pushes away from getting us enough time to understand things.
What is critical thinking?
Critical thinking, to me, is our ability to look at something, a concept, a fact, or even a premise or a theory with a critical eye. So we are separating ourselves a little bit from our persona. We're looking at it primarily from what can I counteract this piece of information in another way. I want to do this not to be a bad person or anything. I want just to analyze it differently so that I can verify it. So I can make sure that this is the truth or this is not the truth. So critical thinking is very useful now for LLMs because they are statistical machines, right? So the outputs are statistical, not always reliable. Very, very good, but not 100% reliable. So everybody needs that critical thinking for LLMs to recognize what seems trustworthy information and not so much trustworthy information.
Well, it is interesting that LLMs are not deterministic, and therefore you are going to get variation in answers. But when people trust the first thing that it tells them, they're actually operating on only one linear truth. There could be multiple truths.
That's true.
Or then maybe none of them are a truth, which is interesting. We've discussed how the students are changing. I wanted to come back to one thing which is much more related to the BCI thing. Obviously, everything Elon Musk does gets a huge amount of PR and awareness because he's pioneering many things. There's a diversity of opinion about him as a person or what he's doing, but there's no denial in terms of various technologies, whether it's low Earth orbit connectivity and communication, obviously celestial, like space exploration, but you've also got Neuralink. And I was reading that I believe it's Newcastle University and possibly one other have agreed a UK clinical study with Neuralink.
Okay.
Now, I'm unsure about whether they're invasive or more surface, but we're seeing that emergence of US tech starting to emerge within UK and Europe, which we've certainly seen at LLMs. Are there UK equivalents to Neuralink, or what? Do you have a view on Neuralink or its decisions? Like, have they made key architectural decisions that you could be, could help me understand?
Yeah, that's very good question. Yeah, I'm very interested in the evolution of Neuralink for various reasons. Recently, we have had very much interest in UK universities on this type of technology. There is a research program recently, you must look that out if you haven't already, called ARIA. And they had like a big call. I think they invested over £60 million in neurotechnologies like this. And tech is evolving fast. With Neuralink, they are operating not particularly at, let's say, what the researchers are actually operating, because we have a realization about implants. So Neuralink is an implant technology. They're developing their own chip, their own implantation mechanisms. All looks really good. Looks really good from the perspective of, first, you are a heavy investor like Elon Musk. You have a huge influence in our society with your public persona. And you are basically acknowledging the technology we've been building for years. So this is all very positive. And I really like that Neuralink exists. I'm really glad for that.
Because it's bringing awareness to the work that's being done.
Exactly.
In this AI space.
Is inspiring not only our researchers to work harder to make sure that the tech goes in the right way, and that's the big question, right? It's always a race to get the tech, but what's the right way to get the tech is another question. But he's also inspiring other entrepreneurs to maybe think that this is a good tech to invest. And the thing that maybe with Neuralink we would like to see more is the knowledge that we have understood about implantation, the effects that might happen long term. And obviously, I'm speaking this from an outsider. I'm not sure how much of the plans Elon Musk has about long-term implantation. But we have seen some signs from his experiments with them reporting electrodes failing deep in the brain. And these are common reports that we had before in the academic literature. What happens next? So after failures, you can replace the implant or you can leave it there. Neither options are optimal. Replacing the implant means a new open skull surgery for the patient, which is not pleasant at all. With surgery in the brain means active bleeding, immense chances to hit a vessel in the brain, means dislodging the brain volume. All things that sound alarming, right?
Yes.
Leaving the implant there means body foreign reaction from our cells. So we start seeing glia cells accumulating around the implants. That's our first, let's say, our first reaction. But then
like scar tissue.
Exactly, scar tissue start forming.
It's almost like when you have something in your finger, you start getting that dead skin, it eventually grows it out by almost like pushing it out.
Exactly. But, most importantly, of when the scar tissue happens is, depending on the location of the brain, it can have serious consequences. Because essentially what you're doing is disrupting neuronal connectivity, which is responsible for something.
Does scar tissue have neurons within it or not?
No, they will eliminate connection synapses.
I see.
So then it becomes a question because I don't think, I'm not sure with the claim that we have just an abundant amount of neurons, so must be some neurons that are not important. No, I think every neuron is important.
I feel as though I want a T-shirt that says that every neuron is important.
Maybe we need to do it.
I think I will. So you're talking surface arrays, things that kind of go on the side that are like wirelessly beaming in. But what about this blood-brain barrier that stops our phones from frying our brains? Like, is that not going to prevent that sort of thing?
No, because it comes from the the epithelial layer in our vessels. So it's stopping things going through our blood system to reach the neurons. But this is an open skull thing, right? So when we're planting the surgery...
Oh, the surface arrays within the skull.
Exactly. So we are removing the skull first and then adding the implants there. And the skull is this other safety that we have against the outside world, right? Our brains, I mean.
The world starts to become a much more confusing place when you start to be open to
That's right.
subjectivity.
Absolutely. And that's why critical thinking is important, my friend. That's why I am a huge advocate for specialized classes in critical thinking.
Is critical thinking taught as a subject?
Not as a subject, no, but I think we should. We are not, even before university, you see.
Absolutely.
We need to have our abilities to navigate through the internet and identify what's a trustworthy source of information that we can say, yeah, I've looked at this at every angle and I trust this. Not just take it as face value and move on to the next thing. And that's where fake news start being generated and spread out, right? So our brains are very interesting machines that we try to find similarities in every piece of information we have. We try to make connection that's not there, like conspiracy theories usually tries to do.
Why does the human brain do that, especially after trauma? Is it some sort of survival instinct?
Yes, we needed to map our...
How do you know when you're doing that? Because if one was that aware, there could be objective. You actually said when you were talking about critical thinking, it's almost like stepping out of your persona and analysing something like objectively without those cognitive bias or trauma responses, wherever that sits within our cognition, which is that's a phenomenally hard thing to do for people.
It is, but it's part of our embodiment. We needed our senses to evolve, to reach our cognitive abilities, reach our intelligence. We still need them. So we still need. They're very important, but sometimes they're a bit outdated. They do not help. So as cognitive beings, we can train ourselves to overcome it, to overcome information that is wrong, that may seem not right, to avoid also the consequences of that information. Because when we're exposed to fake news, we always think about the truth, which is obviously the primary importance. But some people get emotionally affected by fake news that affects their lives, that even change their lives completely. So it's very dangerous stuff. So critical thinking becomes extremely important asset. And now with AI making a fuzzy, let's say, making our environment a little bit more chaotic in a way, people who have great skills at critical thinking, I think they will have an advantage in this area. They will learn that LLMs, they are not complete source of truth. They will navigate through that, through what you said, other types of information, and they will compile this and synthesize it and figure out what's the truth. And then they will collect the benefits of that, for sure.
Michael, do you know, when we're speaking, I get the sense that your intelligence and knowledge is in motion. It's not, you haven't said, this is how I see things. What you seem to exist within is this motion of deep humility to know that things are progressing and moving. There's so much more to discover. Things that we've discovered aren't relevant, they are relevant. That process of intellectual motion is actually, it comes across quite subtly, but I find it quite joyful, because there's this constant sense that there's more to learn, there's more to discover. It's exciting and progressive, which I like a lot. I like
Thanks.
a lot.
I didn't know this about myself.
No, maybe it's more about me thinking this is the way it is. I'm sticking with that. Do you know? But it's very. I find it quite energizing.
Oh, cool.
But
Thank you.
on that point, we've discussed. We've touched upon brain-computer interfaces and technology. I have the sense that I have not got the ability to go deep on these things, but we've tried to scratch the surface on a number of elements that kind of sit adjacent to this development of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of hype people and self-proclaimed experts who talk about things like AGI. When people talk about it, I question whether they really understand what they're talking about, because it just doesn't seem to be backed by research and knowledge and papers. But speaking to you, I get a sense of this motion of intelligence, meeting new students, understanding the skills that are required and the changes. We talked through, which has been profound for me, and it's something I'm going to process, this idea of the embodied intelligence and how that's fundamentally different to these digital and synthetic large language models that just couldn't possibly be embodied at present. But what we have discussed in detail is both the benefits and potential negatives, positives and negatives of us pursuing synthetic intelligence too much. And I'm going to ask you, like I asked everybody, do you believe AI will take humanity to a utopia or a dystopia?
Wow. I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. So I have a lot of hope. So I think I'll be inclined to a utopia. But reaching the utopia is never straightforward, is it? And when is the utopia going to happen is also another question. Maybe we can have dystopian until we get to the utopia. What is particularly interesting for me is to see how our society reacts to this new technology. So I've been watching friends and family and everybody being empowered by this. Not only at the cognitive level, but also the emotional level. I've seen some good of even within my family to use AI to understand each other, communicate with each other. And also it takes us to a private place. It's a machine that you can go to the bathroom or wherever in your house and discuss something that's troubling you. But you discuss it first, makes you rethink a little bit of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, before you can even communicate that to a relevant party of yours. So there is a lot of consequences, even the ones that I don't know, that it's basically happening at the moment. What I hope we do with this is that we progressively start engaging with a new level of acquiring information that pushes us to think more, right? And if we think more, Ian, I think we are in a safe place. If we become, let's say, our own leaders through thinking, the world is going to start realizing that maybe there is a better way of engaging in politics. There is a better way of engaging with our health. There is a better way with relationships and communication that, seems possible. Now, there is another side to this. What if we don't take that decision? What if we don't engage in the healthy ways? Right now, it seems like I'm a spectator. I'm sure you think a little bit the same as well. What we're going to do collectively. I mean, from our role in our society as, let's say, a lecturer, a professor in a university, we think about leading this by example first and then teaching them. And certainly we are doing that. And again, that comes to the importance of university again in our society, because as we speak, our colleagues, we are all figuring out this technology. not only to do research, but to do teaching. And also we are really comfortable with it, which I think it's really soon we're going to start thinking about new modules, about how to safely use this in any kind of setting. And every department, especially here in Essex, is interested in this question, how to use AI safely. And we are working hard to make sure that soon enough, our students will be equipped with knowledge of how to safely use AI, and hopefully the Utopia trend or the Utopia direction can be actually effective and reasonable.
We are in a computer game.